Hey, it is not 2:30 like I had hoped it would be. It is 2:46. Yeah, I'm going live now, and I don't know how to stop that. So let's hit silent on that computer. I'm going live right now, Matt. No, well, I hope not. I don't know. I'm finding out everything as I go here. So that why is this? Okay, I don't know how to stop that. So that'll be another lesson to be learned. Anyhow, 2:30, supposed to be 2:30, 2:46. We had a little trouble with the camera today. I don't know about the voice today, so hopefully somebody who's watching online somewhere can let me know if the voice is doing what it's supposed to do. Ash, do you want to pull it up and put a headphone in or something, and see if you can listen to it? Let's pull this up. I have to figure out the comments next. Oh man, I got 8 people on. I'm still helium voice. No. Okay. Let me see. Is it helium voice again? Okay. Thanks so much. we're working on this, man. Okay, let's do this. I'm working on it. Okay, let me see here. So I want a MIDI. What was that called? What was that called? Was that MIDI something? Yeah, audio setup. Let's check this real quick. We're going to see if we can't change something midstream here. And maybe it's just going to have to be something that I do all the time on this thing. I'm loving that I still have the helium voice. If you are back with me after yesterday's debacle, I mean, it's just nice to have you here, though I assume that you're, looking exactly for what's going on right now. Let's come in here. Okay. Was I supposed to go 4,100? Let's see. Here it comes. Changing my voice. Did the change happen? I don't know. I feel like I gotta wait a couple seconds because there's a little bit of a lag. Ash is listening to it. It feels so good to be like back at normal. We just caught up here on our stuff, so it feels so good. There is a little doodad here that I have to do. Thanks, Phil, for checking in on me here and letting me know that's better. We're off of helium voice. So, anyways, as I said, yesterday we were kind of floundering around trying to figure out live streaming. Unsuccessfully. We are back at it again today. We're working on some of these things, and the camera is a trick. The audio is a little bit of a trick, and we're having to do this. If you're here just to see me, kind of fall apart, thanks for being here still. Hopefully everything kind of cooperates with us today, and if not, I'm watching all of these things. If it does sound better, and sounds like it does, I do have a few people to thank. Matt's in the comments right now, and he's a big one. He's been like the pro bono AV technician consultant for churches all over the Southwest field. So we want to say a big thanks to Matt. He's got a future career here, I think, as an AV consultant for churches. So thanks for that. Second is my buddy George Lopez. You can catch him on his upcoming podcast called Not That George Lopez. But both of these guys have been a lot of help to me. They've been really encouraging to me the past couple days. So just thanks to both of you guys. This live stream, work in progress still. We're just doing this to try to figure out a few things, trying to do the technical side to see how everything works. But it's also just like an opportunity for me to do kind of like a more broadly cast work of discipleship than just for the local church. We do a lot of stuff for the local church, but I feel like there's maybe an opportunity to also do a little bit that's a little bit more broad for the wider social media communities that I have. In this time, I think that discipleship is probably one of the most important things that, we are working on at this time. Discipleship can take a lot of different focuses. It can look in a lot of different directions. Am I still streaming? Are you able to tell? I'm looking at a frozen picture over here on my side. Maybe I'm gone. Okay. Discipleship is kind of like upward looking. Sometimes we're dealing with, like the relationship that we have with God, the things that we do in worship. It can also take on like an outward trajectory in which we're thinking about like what we do with our faith, and what we do within the grace that we've received, right? But I think in these days of sheltering, that maybe the most important thing that we're doing as Christians should be focusing on not that upward trajectory and maybe not the outward trajectory, though if like that's where the Lord is calling you right now, go and do that. But for me, one of the most important issues have been like issues of like identity, the things that point inward right now, for the individual believer, but then also for the church as well. So questions of who am I? What am I doing during this time? What are the things that are influencing me? The development of my character. What's influencing the development of my character? And just quick apology, like we've got a ton of stuff going on outside the building today. They've got they've relieved some of the construction constraints on our sheltering, and so the corner is being worked on as we speak. So you'll probably hear a little bit of stuff outside. But anyways, I have been working through what I've come to call, or what's been told to me, character questions, things that were provided to me through like a discipleship coaching relationship that I have. And they are questions that have, for me, provided a lot of really fertile ground for thought, and while I'm trying to figure out, this live stream space, I figure that, I might as well ponder on some of these thoughts with you. If you have questions, about any of the stuff that we're doing, at the church, any of the stuff, that I'm talking about in discipleship, go ahead and just throw them into the comment sections over here, and I should be able to track with them as they come in. So, if you have any questions, maybe I'll get a chance to speak to some of those as well as we go. But today, the question that I really want to think about is kind of a very simple one, and it's one that's been coming up a lot for me during this sheltering time. It's come up a lot in our house, and it's this. How is my rhythm of rest and work? Like, how is that rhythm going? How am I tending to that rhythm? I want you to think about that for a second, right? And if you're watching, go ahead and just jump into the comment section and just answer that question for you. How is your rhythm of rest and work right now? And then we'll talk about some of those responses in the comment section. I think it's an important question for us to consider, especially as we're in this like weird space of not really having much separation between the space that we work in, and then the space that we find our rest in. Let me just like take you through the scenario of kind of like what happens in our house during the day. We wake up anywhere from 5:30 to 7 o'clock. These days there's not really like a real consistent time that we're getting up. But we wake up, and then you just do all of those things that you do. Go use the bathroom, do all your dressing up, brushing your teeth, those things. Once in a while we're getting dressed, but just to be honest, like we're not getting dressed every day right now. You eat. We try to clean up some of the house, because we've got two little ones in the house. So, there's like a lot of cleaning up that we have to do around our house all the time. And then we'll just kind of like sit and probably, watch cartoons or, scroll through the internet, see what's on social media, like what happened overnight, and those kinds of things, right? Then at 9 o'clock in the morning, that is when work starts to happen in our house. Ashley is the first one that goes to work. She goes in at 9 o'clock, right? And so her commute is all the way back to the kitchen, the back side of the house, and we've got her a workspace that's set up there, right? And she'll start going through her things, that she's doing in work. The kids and I, we get to spend a little bit more time together early on in the day because, we've got a thing that happens at 9:30, and that's when it really becomes like the time that we all go, right? So we spend a little bit of time together, and then at 9:30, my daughter Tegan starts her morning Zoom class every day, and then I start my work sitting right next to each other. So we've got a couple computers set up over here that we work from. We get up to the computers, right, and work begins. And then, just being honest, like we spend most of our time sitting in front of a screen for most of the day. At first, like at 9:30 when we were sitting in front of the computers, I don't get a lot done, right, because we're spending most of our time making sure that my daughter's paying attention in her class. You think you can go tell them to tune it down a little bit? She is 5 years old, right? So I mean, like it's a tough thing for her just to like pay attention through this whole 40 minutes that she's on a Zoom class, right? So we spend most of that time. That moment is where a little bit of my frustration starts to rise up, though. In all of my day, right? Because like I'm trying to get work done, but then at the same time I can't really get anything done because of what we're doing there. Now, eventually we finish that Zoom class and then we move on to like the things that we do for her school, right? Like the little assignments, we do the reading and writing exercises. I was joking on Facebook a few weeks ago about matematigas. I learned that my daughter was not saying 3 different words, but she was just saying mathematics, in Spanish. And so we'll do those reading writings and math exercises. Some days we're doing art projects, sometimes it's PE day, and so we're doing some little exercise. But all the while we're doing that, I'm still trying to get my daily work done, the stuff for the local church, emails out, communications with those folks and with friends as well. Around 11 o'clock, TV goes on. The kids are free to like watch TV. They're free to play, until lunchtime, and then until they take their nap. And really, that's like the opportunity that I have to actually get work done in the house. Like their attention is somewhere else. They don't need somebody watching them 24/7 at that point, right? So I get more stuff done. If everything goes right, the kids go down for a nap at 2 o'clock, right? And they're in their bedroom till, about 4 o'clock, whether they're sleeping or not. And I get, to finish up communications. I get to do like this kind of stuff during this time. And then, like once they get up, like, I don't know, well, if it's a really good day, I'll film, for the other stuff that I'm doing. On YouTube. Maybe I even, like, if it's a really, really good day, I'll start doing some editing as well. But around 4 o'clock, right? Like that's when, they start to come back up. They show up, they play toys, they're in the living room. If they get a little bit too wild, we'll put the TV back on for them. And then at some point I start to make dinner, and then Ashley, at 5:30, she's done with work for the day, right? And then that's the day, right? So, I mean, like when you lay it out like that, sounds like a good, what do you call it? Like a good, schedule, pretty sound, pretty good. Now, the question I have, right, is how often does that happen the way that I described it? And the answer is like rarely, like hardly ever. I mean, like I started this live stream about, 15, 20 minutes late, right? So like the answer truly is rarely that the day goes off the way that we should. We wrestle in this space between our work rhythm and our rest rhythm. And part of the reason why we wrestle with that so much is because like this space that I'm sitting in is at the same time, the place where I work. Increasingly we eat meals in this room, so we sit down and we just sit around the coffee table and have our breakfast, our lunch, our dinner. When we shut off for the day and we're not working anymore, this is still the space that we find ourselves in. And, increasingly, like this place is where I work, I eat, and I rest all in the same place. So, like if you were to ask me how are my rhythms of work and rest, the truth is they're not always healthy. They're not always good. I think it probably is a good place for you guys to jump in, if you wanted to, write in the comments, how your rhythms of rest are going as well. It's okay if they're not great, right? Because we're in this weird space. In our house, we have to work really hard to develop separate rhythms of work and rest that will have ramifications on the physical spaces that we are in. We have to learn how to, in some ways, separate, like this desk from the rest of the room, right? Like I have to be able to separate the front half of the living room from the back half, right? Like our dining room is just over my shoulder here, and it's just 15 feet away from where I'm sitting right now, right? But like I have to be able to separate that space a little bit and have a physical, mental separation between these spaces. Like this is the space where work happens, that's the space where something else happens. But those separations can't be limited just, I think, to physical spaces, right? Because if I do all of my work during the day on a screen, it's gonna take for me to get away from a screen in order to find rest, right? Like I can't work on my computer doing emails, doing film editing, like all of these things. All the meanwhile, like I'm kind of skipping over and looking at Facebook, like you do, and then think of that time as rest, right? Like if I go straight from work straight into something that should be rest, how much rest am I actually getting if there's no separation between those two things? I think that that's something that we really have to think about. uh, so how do I get a break from not just this computer screen, but also how do I get a break from my phone? How do I get a break from the TV that's sitting right up here? How do I get a break from the other screens that are in our house? There's a point at which we have to be able to like break that tie, and kind of figure out how to find our good rhythm of rest and find our good rhythm of work. It's probably a good question to ask of other people. So if you're like living in a group, you're living in a family, you have roommates, maybe you've got like close neighbors, or you've got circles of people that you're like doing life with. This is probably a good question that you can ask them during these shelter times, right? Because like you can ask them about their rhythms, right? But this is also probably a question that you could have asked of yourself as well, from somebody else's perspective. We talked a couple days ago about how important Ashley's, voice in stepping away from trying to do a daily video and daily emails and daily this and daily that, when Tegan's school started, right? Because as soon as Tegan's school started, like it was just an extra thing that we had to figure out how to build our schedule off of, right? And so, like somebody else is going to be able to see you from the outside and see, are you thriving? Are you surviving a little bit? Are you like barely hanging on by a thread? For me, it was an issue of anger. The more I had to do, and the more that the schooling took away from my ability to do those things, boy, the angrier I was getting. And I'd get angry at my kids, I'd get angry at my wife, I'd get angry at myself, I'd get angry if anybody said anything that was kind of negative towards me, right? I'd get really upset about those things, right? So it's good of us to ask that about ourselves, but it's also good, just like if we have people that we're listening to or that we're living with or that are in our kind of like regular spheres, just a feedback from those people as well. So I think that like that's kind of like the big bit of what I want to say today. I see Sneha is in here. Definitely has blurred the boundary, and with it makes harder to keep a discipline. Yeah, it's really hard to keep the discipline. At times, a lack of motivation with the monotony kicks in, so the rhythms are pretty mixed up, and it's harder to keep on a discipline. Man, I mean, like that's so true. Like we talk about like the time where we wake up, before all of the sheltering took place, there was a decided time that we needed to have things done and being set into motion. And that main thing was getting my daughter to work, right? Or getting to school rather. Getting her to school on the other side of town meant that we had to get up by a certain time. They had to eat by a certain time. They had to get dressed by a certain time. We had to be in the car and driving by a certain time. Otherwise, everything else would be off. And there was just, a need for like that discipline. Maybe like that's one of the things that we can do, is that we just set ourselves to, still like have a disciplined, kind of a regiment, a schedule, right? That we get up, maybe we don't wear our pajama pants all day. Super guilty of that, like right now. But we do those kinds of things. I think it goes to space as well for me. I mean, that's something that I've been learning a lot, that like this space that I work in cannot also be the space that I'm doing all of my social media stuff, and then think that that social media stuff is going to be a break or a rest for what I'm doing. So yeah, I think that, like we try to keep the regiment. We try to, like, have some separation between what is work and what is rest. I think maybe one other thing that I should add into this conversation that maybe isn't in it right now is that we need to have grace for ourselves, and that's just, I think, the reality of this time that we're living in, that is hard to do those things, right? Because we're not going outside. We don't have the freedom to walk outside and to do all of the things that we had been able to do previously, and so, like, we're going to wrestle, we're going to struggle a little bit. And so it's okay for us, I think, to, have a little bit of grace for ourselves. When you recognize that you're kind of like out of whack, instead of just like, wrestling and trying to like grind harder, give yourself an opportunity to take a break, right? Like, see that tension that's within you and maybe say, okay, like, maybe I do need a break. Maybe I need like a little bit of space right now to say, like, deep breath. Where am I finding my rest? Because it is important for us to find rest. If I had a whiteboard with me, I'd start drawing all of my huddle people know, like, that I'd start drawing right now. But if you think of like the life of work and rest, maybe think of those as like a pendulum, that you can't find really good rest if you're working really hard. And sometimes that pendulum has to swing back in the other direction so that you find an opportunity to rest, to abide in the quiet and in the silence. And it's hard. It's hard, like, I don't think anybody's going to make you feel bad if, you're struggling to find that time of quiet and that time of silence. But it is an important thing to do, right? So for those of you guys who, are believers, who are disciples, right? Like, think about that question today. How are my rhythms of work and rest? Am I working too hard and I'm stressed out? Do I need to find rest? Have I been, kind of on the lazy side, and there are things that I need to get done, things that I need to be working on, right? And I need to be swinging in the other direction. Let's be thinking about some of those things, right? So I think, like, that's the thing for today. If you have people that you're living with, ask them questions. If you don't, go ahead and ask me in the comments or emails, text messages, any of those kinds of things, and I'll get back to you. But take some time. Reflect on those things. If you have the opportunity, have the conversation about your work and your rest rhythms. I'm glad. Thank you again to Matt. Thanks again to George for kind of like walking me through a bunch of this stuff. Thanks for helping me figure out how to, like, have a decent sounding voice and not, like, Mickey Mouse over here, through the whole thing. I really do appreciate you guys. Probably not doing, like the full paid babysitting gig for the kids, but tell Joni that we love you guys, and we're thinking about you. But that's it for today. So everybody out there, love you guys. I want you to stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll keep trying to talk to you guys every day here for a few minutes. Okay, talk to you guys soon. Bye.